All right, so we're here to talk about scaling best practices among clubs around the world. This is going to be a panel that, because all four of us have spent time in the UK, will be very UK and American-centric, and we're really excited to bring up our panel now, so we'll do it one at a time. Jake Edwards runs United Soccer League. Come on up, Jake. Thank you. Jake operates multiple leagues here in America. It's really an exploding business for us. Just came off a very successful championship game. Congrats to our friends in Louisville. It was a great game. So really happy to have you here. Next, Ian Ayer. Come on up, Ian. I love this introducing thing. It's kind of fun, yeah? Ian, of course, very well known, very decorated career in Europe, especially with Liverpool, and is now running our Nashville team, which everybody is wildly excited about. Apparently, the music in Liverpool wasn't good enough, Ian, so he had to come to Nashville, Music City, USA. And finally, for those who know me, I did start working at Crystal Palace, the first club I ever worked at. So I know there's media here and people tweet and all that, so I'm going to ask that the next thing I say not go public at all, because I need to say something good about the guy who runs one of our big rivals, Brighton. Paul Barber, come on up, please. Thanks. In the middle there. Yeah, please. Paul runs Brighton, of course, one of the decorated and most engaging and exciting clubs in the English Premier League. Paul, perfect for this conversation, having also worked at Vancouver Whitecaps in Canada. So really happy to have all three of you here, which is great. So welcome, boys. So much going on now that can go back and forth across the pond. But before we do that, love each of you to take a minute and tell me a little bit about what's going on, because exciting stuff going on everywhere. Jake, why don't you start off, if you would, please. Give us a little bit about what's going on with the USL, because it's a wildly exciting time coming into next year.
Yeah, we're finding ourselves in this amazing period of growth for football in the US, and the USL is playing a big role in that growth. We're very proud to see what's happened over the last few years. We've evolved in a short space of time from 4 years ago when we had 10 football clubs, and we've got 36 professional football clubs now in our top division, our championship division. We're launching a new league, a third division. We're calling it League One in 2019 with a further 10 clubs. So there's a tremendous amount of expansion and growth. We've got world-class owners behind our teams. We're building 10, 15,000 seat stadiums. We've got an amazing partnership with ESPN broadcasting all of our games. So that's culminated in a record-breaking season for us. And as you said, we had our cup final in Louisville. We had a sold-out stadium. We had a match broadcast on prime time to 70 million homes domestically, 50 countries internationally. So a lot of interest in what's happening. And it's just very important that we continue to grow in the right way. We build clubs that are sustainable, that are going to be here for many years to come, and keep giving this amazingly passionate fan base in the US more and more quality football.
Great. Paul, the latest and greatest at Brighton.
Well, I mean, first of all, we're delighted to be in the Premier League. Our club is 117 years old, and nearly 20 years ago, not long after, or not long before our 100th birthday, we were almost out of business. We were literally on our knees, no stadium, no training ground, fan base that was dwindling, and here we are in 2018 in the Premier League and loving every minute of it. So we're delighted to be competing with some of the big clubs in the world.
Good stuff. And Ian, a lot going on in Nashville right now.
Yeah, a lot going on. We just finished our first season in USL, which was very successful, and the team did a great job there. And myself, kind of straight out of the box, 5 months on the ground in Nashville, similar to the session just before with Miami, stadium in build, training ground in build, academy in build, hiring the staff. I was with an agent earlier today. He said, "What do you need?" I said, "We need every position 3 deep." So a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so not a lot of time in the music clubs, eh?
No, not a lot.
Couple things on.
Enough, though, enough.
Yeah. So we're over the next 25 minutes. We want everybody to leave with some ideas that they can take back to their clubs or their interactions with clubs, things that are working or have worked for you that you've taken back and forth across the pond. So Ian, I'd love to start with you and talk about actually your time at Liverpool, though. Joint ownership with the Boston Red Sox. So I'd love to know, what was your interaction like with the Red Sox, and how did that kind of work with the joint owners?
Well, we were very fortunate because they're great sports owners, so they know what good looks like. We had a really collaborative system whereby we were left to develop the right solution for our team in the Premier League, but at the same time sharing best practice across both organisations. So whether it was the use of analytics and data around player recruitment and analysis, or whether it was, joining up relationships with sponsors, or all those types of things, ticketing initiatives, we really were sharing information back and forth. And each year my team would come into Florida for spring training for the Red Sox, and we'd do joint sessions with everybody, and it really worked. And I'm so pleased this year to see them win the World Series again, because they deserve it. They put such a great organisation together, led by Sam Kennedy, and it was the proof was in it. But in both organisations are now in a much greater position than they were before Fenway Sports Group got involved, and that was because they gave everybody opportunity to work together and use each other's experience where they could.
So when you went to one of those joint sessions and you walked away, went back to Liverpool, what could you say were, right, I'm going to go and take that and put it in straight away?
Yeah, I think that there are lots of examples, but I think it was always small things, it's just,
Yeah.
I would say the ticketing market in the US is probably more advanced than the very traditional market in the UK, and there were some things that you would never get past Liverpool fans, but some things that really worked, and it was about taking those small things. And we had relationships with, if you look at Liverpool's sort of roster of sponsors now, there's 3 or 4 major American brands in there, and that's not by accident. It's because of the relationships that existed in the US. And it was almost like, I heard somebody talking yesterday about Bayern Munich having an office in the US now, but Liverpool from 10 years ago had 300-400 people in the Fenway organisation working on its behalf. So that was a big part of delivering some of the success.
Yeah, great. Paul, same question for you. When you came from Vancouver, went into Brighton straight away, what kinds of things did you implement that you had done that had worked in Vancouver?
First of all, it's great to see how well soccer is doing here. It's great to see Nashville coming on stream. It's great to see Inter Miami going to be an MLS club. These guys are doing a brilliant job with USL. So for me, having been here 10 years ago with MLS, to see the continued growth and success is phenomenal, and obviously in Minnesota as well. So for me, I think coming back from Vancouver to the Championship first of all, and then the Premier League, I think the fan experience was something I learned a lot about. A lot of things in England are about the 90 minutes of football. Everything's about what happens on the pitch, the result, where you are in the league afterwards. What happens before the game, after the game, was never in England as much a thing as it is here in North America. So I think coming back from Vancouver, taking some of the ideas of creating an experience for fans that was bigger than just the result on the field. Clearly, for most soccer fans, that's going to be the most important thing, regardless. But giving them great entertainment, great food, great drinks before the game, local produce. Hearing Jorge talk earlier about what's going to happen here at Inter Miami with the local food and drink, I think is absolutely the right thing. And football fans, even in England now, are becoming more and more tuned in to creating an experience around the game. Liverpool have got a great fan park outside. We've got one. We have live bands from our city that appear before the game to entertain the fans. If they're good, they come back. If they're not good, they don't come back. But we let the fans decide that. We don't pay these bands. They don't pay us. It's an opportunity for them to showcase their talents as well. So I think combining music, sport, food and drink, great idea.
Jake, you run a leagues, plural now. When we talk about actually taking best practices and scaling them, what kinds of things do you look at when you get your teams together and you've got people who do this? What things actually can go from market to market no matter what the market? What kind of things should the teams be thinking about?
Yeah, I think we're looking constantly around the world at other leagues for best practice ideas. We're looking at the US sports leagues, who I totally agree. I think of so far in advance in many areas of business and fan engagement. So I think it's not there's nuances per market, but generally things work. If it works in Sacramento, it'll work in Nashville, it'll work in Tampa. And I think first and foremost, we've got to understand that football fans, and there are many football fans and passionate football fans in the US, it's not a guarantee that they're going to come out and watch the team week in, week out like they might do perhaps in some other countries. So I think you've really got to work a bit harder from the club level. We spend a lot of time sharing best practices with our teams. Just next week, we're going to have 750 executives from all of our clubs in Tampa and have a 3-day workshop on all of this. So we've got to be engaged with our communities. We've got to be We've got to spend more time understanding our fan base in the US. How do we engage them? How do they consume our football? There's a multitude of things that they can spend their entertainment dollars on. How do we make sure that they're coming to our clubs? So it's being a little tech savvy. It's being aware of the demographic of the fan base. It's all of those things Paul just mentioned about creating an entertainment, getting people there early, getting them connected with the club. I think the unique challenge we have here is that we have a long history of football in the States, going back early 1900s and beyond, with some of the working men's clubs and so forth. But really, as an organized professional structure, we're kind of in our infancy compared to some of the other countries. And so when you walk into Liverpool as a fan or as a player, there's 100+ years of history that's come before, and there's a way of doing things and there's a way of interacting with that club that's just passed on or expected. And when we're talking about a team that's 1, 2, 3 years old, or a league like us that's maybe 8 years old, how are we building that passionate fan affinity? And it's a very interesting challenge, but we have to be creative. We've got loads of good passionate football fans here, but our clubs constantly have to work hard, to keep them coming into the stadium. So yeah, many ways that they do that, but how do you build that loyalty? You've got to include your fan base in the process of building that loyalty.
Ian, early days in Nashville, you said 4 or 5 months in, or also a lot on, like we talked about. But what are your early impressions? What kinds of things are you seeing? And then I want to talk about what kinds of things now, straight on early, you can say, right, we did this at Liverpool, I can bring it to Nashville right away. So tell us about that so we can steal all your ideas.
I mean, initial observations are that great city, great sports city. In many ways, I see similarities with Liverpool, not just because of the music, but a city with real civic pride. If you're from Liverpool, as I am, and you've been in Liverpool, Gerard's down there, he's spent there, and I know he loves the city. It's like there's no greater city for the people who are so passionate about its city, and I think that bodes well for us from a soccer perspective, because there's different types of people we'll attract to the game, but there's an awful lot of people from Nashville who'll want to be there because it says Nashville on the jersey. That's such an important thing in Nashville, and we see a lot of that. Our USL team had a hugely successful first year in 2018, broke the record for the number of season tickets in an inaugural year. So you can see that there's a passion and it's growing, and everybody you speak to is excited about it coming. So seeing lots of positives, and then in terms of what you bring, I think Paul said it, Jake said it, I think the market here is already in some ways more developed than the UK market, as an example, in terms of the fan experience and the entertainment. And for Nashville, we're not just building a stadium, we're building a neighborhood, because we have 10 acres around the stadium to develop as well. So we're building this whole new neighborhood for Nashville, which I think is exciting as it relates to entertainment. And from my Liverpool time, I think one of the things I think we did very well, just like Nashville will be in MLS, Liverpool never had the biggest budgets. People, of course, they're a huge, big club, but they didn't have the money of Manchester City. So very early on in my time there, we realised that we had to be smarter. We had to have better systems in how we scouted and recruited and developed players. And that's over the last 4 or 5 years, you've started to see the fruits of that labour. You've started to see players like Trent Alexander, not just in the first team, but playing for England. You're seeing Joe Gomez, who they've scouted early and brought in. You're seeing young players that we found that we paid reasonable amounts of money for, but are being sold out at really high. So Coutinho at £8 million and sold for 140 plus to Barcelona. So, but that was about being smart. It was about having the right systems and the right talent looking for the right players. And so I see some of that with Nashville. I see us planning our journey, and not just planning for 2020 and 2021, but building a pipeline where we're always looking at talent in a market where, let's be honest, we know that if a player does really, really well, he's going to go somewhere else. That's a reality of the market, so you have to plan for that.
Paul, did I catch a Liverpool guy complaining about player budgets? Did you get that too?
Yeah, I heard it. But well, it's an interesting point, because player budgets in the Premier League are hugely varied now. The top 3-4 clubs have got the ability to pull in the best players in the world from wherever. like Ian said, we have to be smarter. We have to develop our own players. We were thrilled just yesterday that one of our players made his England debut, the first England player from Brighton for 36 years.
Could we not talk any more about that match, please?
But we're also very similar to MLS clubs in the sense that we're having to develop a new fan base as well. You know, our club's 118 years old, as I said, but in many ways we're a new franchise now. And, you know, we lost an entire generation of fans. We're now having to work really hard to get them back, just as Ian will have to work hard to create his fans. And we do a number of things. For example, for every 7-year-old in Brighton that is registered with us, they get a free replica jersey, because some research that we did discovered that kids make the choice on which team they're going to support for the rest of their lives at the age of 7. So why not put the shirt on the back of the kid that's in our city before he gets a chance to support Liverpool or Arsenal or Tottenham or those guys up the road from us called Crystal Palace. So, you know, for us it's really important that we take every opportunity to build a fan base, keep the kids, get them to come to games and build a lifelong support for the club.
You talk about players, and here we deal with something we call a salary cap and financial fair play across the pond. Jake, is there a way, do any best practices scale across that as far as players and all that, given how the budgets are just so different?
In the USL, you know, our player labor costs sort of are increasing about 15% a year, so it's not dramatic. We work hard with the owners to come up with a sustainable business model. We've got to get these teams, you know, up and running and keep them here for the long term. So we've got to make sure spend on players is in line with revenue growth, and we've done a very good job of that. I think what you'll see now is a shift towards. We'll see, you know, with Drogba, we've had Didier Drogba in the league for 2 years. We've had players like Joel Cole and you know, Sean Wright-Phillips, and you'll see some of those guys that are coming towards the end of their career, and they'll come into the USL, and that's absolutely fine. For our league, you know, it adds some exposure, certainly internationally, and it will help those players, those young professionals at those clubs. I do see the spend on players increasing. We don't have salary caps, but we have deep-pocketed owners that are choosing not to go crazy, and we have to try and manage that. What I think is going to be a big opportunity for our owners will be in the transfer of players, will the development of players and the selling on of players. I think we've done not a great job of scouting domestically in the US. I think there's a lot of talent, certainly in the USL. There's a lot of young players. They should be on the radar of MLS clubs or potentially overseas. Now we've got some challenges here about training compensation and certain mechanisms that I think are not incentivizing owners to invest in youth development and academies. We need to overcome that, and I think we will. But I do see a great value in the players, the domestic players here, and I think for our owners, we spend a lot of time with them now on thinking about that, the football business. I think we're doing a great job on the commercial business, but we need to start thinking about identifying those 8, 9-year-olds and thinking about how much I might sell that player for when he's 18, 19, 20. So we've got to build the right infrastructure at our professional clubs. We're starting to have some good success there. But the next 2-3 years, that'll be a big project for the USL to make sure we're, you know, tapping into the talent. So you imagine 30 clubs in MLS, you imagine 70 clubs between the 2 USL divisions. The footprint we're going to have there, we've got to start getting the right coaching and the right player development pathways to bring these young players into the professional game. And I think if we can solve that, which we will, we're going to be in great shape as a sport.
Well, let's talk about that, because player development is so crucial when you're facing competition with bigger budgets, as we all do and will. And obviously, when you're in a country that just missed a World Cup, I can't enter into a conversation right now that's not about player development, frankly. It's top of mind for everybody. And our friend Gerard Houllier, sitting right here, did a wonderful job in France after '94 Clairefontaine and everything like that. A great model for all of us as we look to kind of do that. So, Ian, as you enter into Nashville, how are you thinking about player development as being a big part of what you do? What are the first steps? Where do you go from here?
Very much so. I mean, as I said, we recently announced the appointment of our general manager, and really we want to build a consistent pipeline. And of course, at the bottom end of that age group, you know, that's a long time coming, but it's never too late. You know, you need to start that as soon as possible. And we see it being a mix of a dedicated academy facility. Our territory will be the state of Tennessee, but we also see it being, you know, a
a segment of affiliated relationships across the state, because it's not realistic to manage everything from Nashville, right? So it's really, and we're just starting that engagement with all the different organisations across our state with a view to building, the best pipeline we can build. But I think you have to put all of the other parts in place. We see in Europe a lot. You see some clubs that have incredible academies with incredible players in there, but they don't make it to the first team. And so that's all about choosing the right coach and having the right journey. You have to have a coach who's minded enough to give a young player a chance. And certainly, going back two or three managers at Liverpool consistently have all been chosen, because of their ability to take a young player and give him a chance. Because otherwise, you hit a roadblock and you see certain clubs loaning players out at 19, 20, 21 all over the world, but the players are kind of stuck in the club that they've been signed for because there isn't an outlet. And I think in this market we have a perfect opportunity to create that journey. But it is still important to choose the right people in the right positions, coaches in particular.
Paul, we talk a lot about it in the States, and earlier this year in Minnesota, our CEO, Chris Wright, hosted Gareth Southgate, and he was nice enough to invite me along for the night. And over the course of the evening, the one thing that stood out for me that Gareth talked about the most, and by the way, no waistcoat that night, it was pre-World Cup, he was talking about how hard it is to get the young players he's excited about, to get them good games. No spots in the Premier League. Where do we send them from there? How are you dealing with that there as far as bringing up young players that are going to be first team ready?
Well, it's tough. I mean, as Gerard knows, first team managers in the Premier League need to get results, because if they don't get results, then they tend to lose their jobs pretty quickly. So there is this inherent fear about trying young players at first team level in the Premier League, because the competition's so tough and the standard is so high. But we have to do that. We have to be a bit braver, I think, and managers have got to be given more time to allow these players to develop. And if they can't develop with our clubs, then they've also got to be given opportunities to develop at first team elsewhere. And what we're seeing in England at the moment is an increasing tendency for some of the younger players not just to look down the leagues in England, but also overseas. And so you're seeing young players playing in Germany, one played for England last night. You're seeing young players now looking to Spain and Italy and France. And not only is that good for them from a football point of view, I think it's good for them from a life skills point of view, a chance to experience a different culture, different language, and so on. But at the end of the day, we're now investing £4 to £5 million a year in our academy. We've spent £35 million on the facility itself. We do need to generate some results from that academy to justify that expense. And first and most important priorities for our team. If we can't get players to the standard for our team, then we need to get a return from them by selling them to another team. And if we can't do either of those things, then we've got to make sure those kids leave our academy with good mental health, because there's a lot of pressure on them, and it's a huge disappointment not to make it. So the responsibility of clubs now for young players is huge.
Jake, USL at multiple levels is by no means a developmental system for Major League Soccer. That's not what it's for. How do you guys look at player development, and what is the goal of a player at your top level?
As a former player, I think every player needs to be aspiring to play at the highest level they can play. And at some point in your career, you find your level, and that's as far as you're going to go. That said, my experience playing in the Football League taught me that that structure plays a critical role in the development of the game in England. The Football League is not set up to support the Premier League, but it has a major impact on the health of the Premier League, and for players and coaches to be able to make a living in the game outside of the Premier League, that's critical for the health of the sport over there. That's what we're trying to replicate here with our three divisions. And so we've got to look at it as not in that way. If you're going to attract people to spend millions of dollars and build great stadiums and invest in youth infrastructure, you're not going to make that sale pitching it as a development league. So you've got to make that as a proper standalone professional league that has a huge value to that investor, to that community, to build something, to move the game forward. So you've got to look at it like that, and that was part of the rebrand that we went through now, moving from USL to become Championship League 1, League 2, and that'll be very successful for us, I think, next year. Our relationship with MLS has been a good relationship, and I think as two men's professional leagues in this country, it's our responsibility to come together and work out, what is our role and responsibility to move the game forward. We're better off doing that together than doing that independently. That doesn't make any sense. So when we started a partnership back in 2012, we were looking to see how we could solve the problem of player development that the stale system of a reserve league and the lack of development that's coming out of that, and look at some of the leagues in Spain and Germany who have integrated some of the pro second teams into lower division leagues, and similar to what the Premier League have been experimenting maybe with Premier League 2 and the Football League Cup in England. So we did that by having a few MLS second teams playing in our league. We'll have 3 of them playing in the League One as well next year. And you know, there's been some very successful examples of players that we may have lost or may not have been accelerated, and they're in the national team now. They've been sold to maybe Germany or wherever, or they're in the MLS team. So I think from a player development point of view, that's been very successful. I think New York Red Bulls have done a very excellent job between MLS and USL. Yeah. So there's a lot of successful examples, but I think first and foremost for our league, we've got to build a very successful, high-level, high-quality league that people want to play in and invest in, and players can have a long career outside of the top flight.
We've got just a couple minutes left, and I want to close talking about something crucial to any club, the supporters culture, and what that means to a club. You know, I've said before, in Major League Soccer, our playing level is not yet world class. It's on the way, but in the stands, I would put up many of our atmospheres up against anywhere. You'll see the 4 playoff atmospheres coming up in Major League Soccer are going to be fantastic. I've told you before, the Sacramento Republic down the road from where I am often is unbelievable. Great atmospheres here, and obviously in Minnesota, we just closed a season with 52,000 people, and when we win, our supporters sing Wonderwall, and we don't tell them to do that. And in fact, we try to stay out of their way. What they've done in Minnesota is organically, and that led to us getting a Major League Soccer franchise in the first place, and then being able to grow. It's all because of them. How do you then manage that, whether it's starting out or bringing along a culture, and any of you jump in? How do you manage a supporters culture and try to, you know, grow it without telling people who don't want to hear what to do?
Yeah, I think it's different. It's different for different clubs and at different stages, right? So having come from Liverpool, where it's 126 years old, and you literally can't tell them anything, right?
Because they don't want to hear it, right? Which is a good thing, you know, and they take control of it, and it is incredible. So right now, where we're kind of starting out, you know, so we're starting out in 2018, but there was a history of soccer in Nashville, and various little groups of supporters that have come together to create the dynamic we've had at USL in 18. And now we go to the next level at MLS, and I think I think at this stage it's a combination of respecting the existence of these groups and helping them. You know, we have dialogue's the king. I think it's certainly in our case. It's about having a conversation about where they want help and where they want things to help them achieve what they want to create. But at the same time, not trying to be too prescriptive about what that looks like, because nobody wants that. You know, as a fan myself of Liverpool since I was a kid, you don't want somebody telling you it's not certain other sports where it comes on the screen and tells you when to clap and when to cheer. That's not soccer, right? It's not football, so it can't be that, and it shouldn't be that. But it's about finding the balance, and you only find that by good communication.
Paul, Steve Parrish will kill me for saying this, but you guys have a great fan base. How do you work with them?
Well, I agree with Ian. I think you have to facilitate atmosphere rather than force it. And we're lucky in England. We've got a history of fans that love the game. It's their primary sport in most cases, and they love it. We're again a little bit like an MLS franchise in that in building a new stadium, we had an opportunity to facilitate the fan atmosphere by giving people the chance to pick their seats in the stadium that wouldn't be noisy, pick their places in the stadium that may be more family-oriented, pick their places in the stadium that are more corporate-oriented. And I think you have that ability with a new stadium to do that. Anfield is just a wonderful cathedral of football, full stop. They're lucky they don't have that or haven't had to facilitate it in that way. But I think to force it is a problem. And we try and stand back, try and let them create that atmosphere, that culture for themselves. But it's absolutely vital, because broadcasters don't want a dead atmosphere in the stadium. Sponsors don't want it. If you're the home team, you want it to be as hostile as it possibly can be for the visiting team. So it's in everyone's interest to allow supporters to develop the atmosphere as best they can. And that's why I use the word facilitate rather than force.
Jake, I'll let you close for us quickly. Sacramento, Cincinnati, Louisville, some unbelievable atmospheres. Is there one through line as far as working with the fans?
Well, I mean, I have an operations director that tears his hair out when he sees all this smoke and everything, and he's trying to put rules and regulations to make sure everyone's safe. But so I think from a league point of view, you have to sort of, you have a role to play. But really, it's, there are huge groups of football fans in every market now, in every community that we're in, and I think these fans get more access to football than fans in the UK. They see more football over here, so they're quite obsessed about it. The one sort of common thread, I think, is the expression of pride in your community and where you're from and what it means to be from Sacramento, especially Sacramento as the capital of the state, playing second fiddle to maybe LA or San Francisco on a national stage. And now this is the opportunity of these folks to express their pride and what it means to be from that city, and they wear this crimson color and they own that team. And 12,000 people come week in, week out and support that club. Louisville are head to toe in purple, smoke, marching to the stadium, beating the drums, and there's no real history of football in Louisville. And now this team is sold out every state and they're building stadiums. And so I think you've got to, like the gentleman said, you've got to let it grow organically. There are groups there and fans there. They have to find their own identity and what it means to support Sacramento or Oklahoma or any one of these teams. I think what we're trying to foster in our growth and expansion is building those regional rivalries. That's something we've not had in the past here. And I think when you think of Louisville and Cincinnati, that was a really intense rivalry, and lots of those fans would travel to each of those stadiums. When Phoenix went away to Orange County in the playoffs, they took 1,000 fans on 7 coaches to Orange County to that game. So and that really helps the atmosphere when we're getting visiting teams sending their fans there. So it's starting to mean a hell of a lot to these guys. And so it's, for us, we're adding about 1 million fans a year, and so certainly the acceleration of support is just phenomenal. And our clubs have to, let that grow organically. And as a league, we don't manage it, but we've got to sort of be aware for safety concerns and all those kind of sensible things. But it's just amazing to see how these fans are owning those clubs.
I think the only thing we have to draw a line at in England is chainsaws. We don't chop logs in England when people score goals. Let the Portland Timbers do that. They're better qualified than us.
You guys don't score that many goals, so it's not that big a deal. Sorry, I had to
That's
take
cheap.
one shot. Had to take one.
That's a cheap one.
Had to take one. Actually, they're above Palace in the standings now, so I shouldn't have said anything. Jake, thank you very much. Really look forward to seeing everything ahead for USL.
Thank you.
We're excited to work with you in Minnesota, of course. Ian, best of luck with everything in Nashville. Paul, nice to see you. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy lunch and the rest of Soccerex. Thank you very much.
Well done, mate.
Okay, thanks, Ian.